In this lecture, let's talk about SMS and the short messaging service that's been with us for a long time. In fact, this was designed as a part of the GSM standard, which is our 2G mobile network. So that was actually launched in the late 1990s. And this little diagram here seems a little complicated. I just want to point out a couple of the broad segments of this GSM network. We're not going to get into too much detail here in terms of how the GSM works, since we're talking about SMS. So it's kind of a good idea to have a little understanding how that is delivered. So the end user has mobile devices. Obviously, this picture shows something really old. This is really the kind of the phones that people used to use in the knots or the around that time. And so this and the way that works is that the phone, the device, will be able to send messages through the mobile network, which goes through the base station, typically wirelessly, the cell towers. And then the signal gets translated into a base station controller, and that gets sent over to different places. There's two kinds of networks because we still have the traditional telephone that's hooked up to the phone lines at homes and offices. And then we have these mobile devices that are, basically connected through the internet. Actually, there's two types of connection. And the cell signal gets transmitted, and one is through the line. It's called a circuit switch, and the other one is basically wirelessly. And then they also gets connected into this similar system, but typically those packets will be routed in a data network, which is using the GPRS standard at the time, for so-called packet switch. This is we're talking about the internet. And then this is about typical phone calls and also messages that gets through. The messages are typically gets through similar systems. Now, we have this part in this GSM network. This is about SMS. So the SMS, it can be routed both on the circuit switched network as well as packet switch network. And of course, it needs the way for that to be delivered, it needs to look up the phone books. So it needs to look up of the register of the numbers and then get those things routed either on the circuit or on the internet. And this is kind of the general idea how this SMS might work. Now, how do we send an SMS from a Python program? Right? If that's, in our IoT system, we got an interesting event, want to notify somebody. And there are a couple of choices, but eventually you would have to interface with a mobile network operator to get connected to this core network. And then you will be able to exchange the SMS with other users. So that's kind of the idea. And now we're obviously not going to be able to, as developers, you're not going to be able to get tapped into that by, talking with one of the mobile carriers, right? They're not, this is, but then there are so many choices. There are companies that have done that work for you. And then they wrap up the functionality nicely into a typically a REST API for you to consume. Okay. So essentially, let's say a company comes in, they have a partnership with mobile operators and they get access to the mobile network, and they will be able to deliver the SMS to the users on that network. So we just need to have our Python program talk to this SMS service provider. These are sort of the middleman. So one of the well-known SMS service provider, well, API providers to be specific, is Twilio. And Twilio, they don't just do SMS, they have other services too, but they are one of the well-known API providers. And that kind of the whole company, the revenue is based on selling their APIs. Now, for our testing purposes, we'll create a trial account. The trial account starts with some credit, and you can keep using the trial account. It's not time-based until the credit goes to 0. Then you would have to pay from that point on, or create a different trial account. Okay, so if you just for development purposes, that's not a big deal. And of course, Twilio is not the only one that provides SMS service. So for example, AWS has a service that does that too. So AWS, let me kind of just show you that. I'm not using this in our example here because in terms of a development trial, I think Twilio is a better deal. Okay, just, you get more mileage over there. And also want to show you a variety. And I just kind of know that Amazon AWS is a juggernaut. They provide services for almost anything under the sun. Are they always the best deal? Not necessarily. So when it comes down to, if you're really building a commercial application, then you would have to consider the cost in terms of how much you pay as you go, or what is the deal you can get versus the development cost. Various different things to consider. You can reliability and security, all those things. Those are sort of your choices that you can make. AWS is not the only provider for many of those. In fact, a lot of the services, maybe not necessarily SMS, many of the things that you need to use, they do provide a easy to use service for you to hook into that's reliable, and you pay as you go. But also, you can consider you can run many of the open source software yourself. Then you have to manage that, make sure it's reliable, make sure it's scalable, can handle the traffic that comes in. So those are the considerations. So we're not getting into how to really build a commercial application here. So I want to show you different choices here. This is called a simple notification service. It's a feature rich. It does many different things. It provides a queuing service in a way, the way you use it is also similar to MQTT that I've introduced you to. It also does a couple other things. Of course, this is one of their services that's integrated with all of their own other suites of services. And as you'll see at the end, this is one of the features of SNS, is the SMS and also email messages. You'll notice this does email messages, but there's also the SES, and that's a more tailored for email handling. Like if you have an email campaign, typically what a company wants to do with emails. That's more more feature rich. Now this email message here for SNS is more of for the purpose of a simple notifications, I would say, maybe operational emails. But again, underlying technology, most of them really share the same stuff. They just give you different interfaces. So we're not using the SNS in our example here. I'm gonna show you the Twilio, how to use Twilio. This is their documentation. You can just navigate to this. It's very simple to find, and you can kind of look at their API overview. There's there's authentication. You need to have an account ID and an authentication token, and they provide libraries for you to use to make the calls in the most popular languages. That if we use Python, they have a Python library that you can use. In fact, we're going to use a library to make the call, which is very straightforward to use. Okay, so that's really that. That's typically what a API provider gives you. They are also so-called, basically a SaaS vendor. They provide you API, and then you basically just use that functionality in your application. Now, and then first thing you want to do to be able to use it, you need to create a Twilio account. So you go to the main website, twilio.com, and then click on this sign up. And over here, you provide the name and email and password and just start your trial. And then you will also ask for a phone number for verification. And then just to get that flow completed. And then you need to verify the email as well. So click on the link once you got the email from them. So then you'll have easily get a trial account created. You don't need to provide a credit card. Okay. So I already have one created. So I'm going to start from there. And by the way, you can create multiple projects if you want. So I tried out with a different project. Now I'm going to use a new project here to show you some of the things. And you can create a new project. A project is kind of a sub account that's under your primary account. Okay, so I'm going to use this new one. So I'll just show you how to set these things up. So first thing to do is you want to get a free number. Now, this is the number that's managed by Twilio. Twilio. And then when you send a message, you basically you invoke their API. You send your message to Twilio. That message is tied to a you have a from. So it's like an email, right? You have a phone number that you need to send from, and then you have a phone number that that's sent in to. So when you do that, in fact, you will have to have a phone number to start with as the origination phone number. So what you do is you're gonna click on this phone numbers, and then you need to basically purchase a number, buy a number. Now, don't worry about this. You're not really paying. Remember, you don't have the credit card here. And you will get a one number without even charge on that credit that's provided to you for free. You have, I think, $16 credit. And so you don't need to worry about this really while you're developing your application. And if you don't have a preference, just get a random number. Let's see, not find a number, I'll get a number for you. So I'm going to just, do, well, actually, you want to make sure that number is able to process SMS, pretty much all the numbers it will do. So this is the one that we are doing here. So let's just say we're going to pick this one. I mean, you can pick a good number, whatever you can even search by a prefix of the number. But for this purpose, I don't really care. I'm going to pick the first one here. Okay. So buy. All right. And now I click on buy. It's so if you are run out of your credit, if you want to continue using the same number as the price is just shown here, it's $1 a month to keep that number. Okay. And so once you have this number, so I'm gonna we'll come back to this. The other piece of information for you to make the API call is to get API credentials. The credentials, you click on this console dashboard, right? So over here, there's two pieces of information. Account SID, or just the identification, SID, it's just an ID. And then you also have auth token. That's like the password. So you can show this to see what this is, or you can just directly copy. And then this is the phone number that we're going to be used. We just purchased for free. And this is our origination number when we send a message. Okay, so basically, now the next thing to do, we got all the information we need. Let's take a look at the little program. And program is very simple. So first of all, you need to install this Twilio library. So use the Python pip install. And we're going to import this client class from, and then we're going to rename it as a Twilio client. And over here, well, let's say this is the message you want to send, hello world. So you'll make an object of Twilio client, pass in the cloud account ID and also the auth token that we just saw right here. Okay, we're going to put this into your environment variables. So I don't need to show you where to put them. I've been doing this for a long time now. So you should have known how to put this into your .env file when loading the .env. So because you need to define these variables, the environment variables there in the .env file with those values. Okay. And then we're going to just simply use the twilio.messages.create. And then our from phone number, from phone, is this number that you just purchased. Copy the whole thing with the country code +1. And then the body is the message you're sending. So technically, there is a limit of 160 characters. And if your messages are longer than that, it will still send. It will basically be essentially segmented into multiple messages. So you don't really have to worry about this. And the two phone number, for the testing purposes, use your own phone number. Also remember to use the country code +1. Okay. And then you just run this. You just run this. All right, it's finished. And let me show you the message that I just received. So let me share. Okay, I need to stop that screen share so I can share from my phone. Okay, so I just shared that. This is basically the message that we just sent, hello world. Okay, and since it's a trial account, Twilio is going to prefix that with that message here so that you can't really use this for commercial purposes and because it doesn't look very good, right? So suppose you're building a commercial application, then in the live account, you will, you have to pay, then this message will not be prefixed and you can then type in whatever message you need to say to your customer. So that's pretty much it for sending SMS. And this is just another notification method you can do in your IoT programs. Okay.